Hey everyone, this is Ifrit from server 1018, and today I'm going to talk about the Warzone Expedition, otherwise known as the Kill event, which will be happening on our server starting tomorrow. This event happens every 2 weeks in server versus server. The first week of the matchup is the Groundhog event as the last day of the week, and for the second week it is Warzone Expedition, which is a lot of fun and is where you can go to the enemy server and they can come to our server, and it's a free-for-all fight, so it's a good opportunity to get out a lot of aggression that you may have with NAPs on your server, no attack policies, where we can't attack each other. This is the day that we can attack anyone that we would like, but preferably players on the other server, because that's how you get points in this event. You do not get points for attacking our own members, plus we don't want to do that anyway because we're just going to weaken our own server. So the goal is to defeat and kill as many ants on the enemy server, or of the enemy, I should say, whether it's on our server or their server, as possible in a 24-hour period. So the way that you get to the enemy server, we should just cover that first, is you're going to press on this map button, and then you'll see the map of server 1018. If you scroll to the right, you'll see that it says state 1019. You're just going to click that arrow, and you will just scroll through going up or down to get to the server that we will be fighting against. So you can see at the top of my screen it says state 1021. That is the server we're facing. We'll just look at their tree. You can see that they have a lot of activity at their tree. It looks like their server is still fighting for tree. For our server, we came up with a rotation-based system to allow us to rest on Saturdays, so we don't have to spend it fighting each other, and also don't waste a lot of speed ups and resources having to heal our ants. So it's a much more effective strategy, and particularly since we'll be fighting a lot tomorrow, we might as well rest now and save our resources for that event. To teleport to the enemy server, it's very simple. You just simply need to go to this screen, 1021, and you just tap on the map, and you see that it says teleport. This will use an advanced teleport. Right now it says cannot teleport, not during cross server period. So that will not allow me to go today because it is not the kill event. However, during the kill event, you'll simply tap, click teleport, and you'll move your base to that server just using a advanced teleport. And it's as simple as that to jump over there. During this event, there's going to be a few ways to get points. I wish I could show you on the screen how that works, but unfortunately I can't. But I'll just describe how it is going to happen. So, for example, the first way to get points is attacking enemy anthills, which will hopefully be defended by the enemy player, and you will get points for defeating the ants in their base. You will get more points for the higher level tier ant they have. So a tier 1 ant is going to give very little points, but a tier 8 ant you defeat is going to give you significantly more points. So you want to be fighting players that you are confident that you can beat, but you're also hoping that they're going to have a lot of high tier ants in their base. Simply going around and burning some of the very small and weak ant hills will not get you a lot of points, unfortunately. So try to focus on people that are around your skill level but a little bit lower, so you know that you're going to win, and you can focus that way. So that's the first way to get points, is by attacking enemy ant hills to get points. The second is going to be actually very similar to the tree event. What you will see happen is a lot of players are going to surround the tree, and there will be a lot of activity here, but it will not involve the land of abundance or the tree itself. It is only going to involve the squirters. And what will happen is players will pile into these servers. I believe it's up to 30 marches can be in one squirter at a time, and you gain points for how long you sit in the squirter. So for example, normally during the tree event, the squirter launches an attack against the tree every 30 seconds. In the kill event, it's a different mechanism where every so many seconds, so every 30 seconds or so, you will get a certain amount of server versus server points. These points are not awarded until you either retreat from the squirter or you pull your march back because someone is going to attack you and maybe you feel like you're going to lose, or if they do attack you and kick you out, that's when those points will be scored. So don't be worried that if you're sitting in the squirter and you don't see your SVS points being increased, it will only happen when your march is coming back, similar to when you're gathering. So that's another good way to get points. Also, what you will see happen is, for example, say this alliance, this BAD alliance, say they have 30 players in this squirter. What I would be doing personally is I would be looking for it to be full or getting very full, and then I would teleport over and I would attack it with my strongest troop, hoping that I can kick everybody out. Um, that's because if you're a high power player, you have a good chance of kicking everybody out because it could just be players with, for example, only tier 7 ants, and if I have tier 8 boosted, there's a good chance that I'm going to beat them and I could kick them all out, which means I could potentially defeat up to 30 marches all at once and score points for every ant I defeat in that one attack, which can be very, very significant. So one of my strategies is to simply teleport from squirter to squirter when they're getting full and kicking everybody out, and then teleporting away to other places in the map to fight other players that may be around on the base. So that's usually a strategy I do to try to rack up a lot of defeats and get a lot of points. Then when my stamina runs out or I'm getting very low, there's one more thing that I do to get points, and that is gather. So I'm going to jump to the enemy server here because I saved it as a favorite. And then you want to gather. So you get points for gathering on the enemy server. You do not get points for gathering on our server. So what I will do is I will, for example, I will teleport somewhere pretty far away. So for example, I'm getting pretty far from the tree here, and I'll teleport maybe in this group of dead bases, and I will send my marches out to gather at level 7 gathering nodes. I mean, this is only a level 5, but I'll send them out to gather at a level 7. And the reason for that is the higher the level of the gathering node, the more points you get for gathering. So that's what I will do, and I will try to gather, all night while I sleep or until my stamina regenerates. And that's a very, very effective way to get points. You can get 9 shells in this event very easily, simply from gathering. So even if you're not a fighter, you can just gather and get the 9 shells. I guarantee it. So when you do that, you'll send the marches out, you'll gather, and you'll pull them back, and you'll get a bunch of points. The one thing I do want to mention is when the enemy is doing that on our server, they are also generating points. So for our members who like to attack, it is a very, very good idea to attack the gathering nodes on our server. So for the 1018 players, we should be looking to see where the enemy is gathering, and we should attack them, because they may have gone to bed thinking, I'm going to go to sleep now, I will gather while I sleep, and then I'll pull my troops back in the morning, and I'll get a ton of points. But if they go to sleep and we attack their gatherers, then when they wake up, they will have no points, because we didn't allow them to gather at all that night. So it's also a very good idea to be on the lookout for enemies gathering on our server. Be very, very careful, because it doesn't matter if it is an enemy on 1021 or if it is a 1018 player that is not in our alliance. It will show up as a red marker on the screen. So when you go to attack them, check to see if it is a player that's in one of our alliances. And one way to do that is, I believe this info button will be colored like this, and you can click it if it is one of our players. And if it is a enemy server player, it will be grayed out and you cannot click on it. I don't know if they've changed that since the last time I've done this event, but that is another quick way to check if you're unsure by looking at the alliance name in the description. So those are a couple of the main ways to get points, is either by attacking the enemy in the anthill, attacking the enemies who are trying to stack up in the squirter, or to gather on the enemy server. One other tip I would recommend is when you are in the squirter, it doesn't matter if you're on our server or on their server, it's the same amount of points. It's just really how long you're sitting in it. I highly recommend, if you are not one of the strongest players on our server, you only use tier 1 or tier 2 ants. The reason for that is, like I said in the beginning, that the enemy will score points for defeating higher level ants. So if you have tier 6 or tier 7 ants, do not put them in the squirter, because one of their strong players that has tier 8 boosted ants will come in, attack, and kick you out and score a lot more points than if you only put tier 1 or tier 2 ants in the squirter. I also think that there may be a minimum to put at least 50,000 ants in a squirter when you send your march. So that's what I will be doing, is I'll be using tier 1 carrier ants for marches that I want to put in the squirter if I am using my weaker marches. If I'm using my pro unit, which is quite strong, I will just send that into the squirter with the tier 8 boosted carriers, because I'm confident that that can defend any of their players' attack. So that one I will put in to try to defend and make it so they can't kick us out. So I think that's very important, and it's also important when you are gathering on the enemy server that you do the same thing. Only use tier 1 or tier 2 carrier ants, because you want to use the smallest amount of ants and the lowest level ant to gather the most possible resources. And maybe I should correct myself. I'm pretty sure it's based on how long you gather, but it actually may be how many resources you gather on the enemy server. So it might be so many points per plant and so many points per sand, wet soil, or meat. So that may be something that I got wrong initially, now that I'm thinking about it. So again, you want to, just like Gather Day, you want to set up your march to gather as many resources as possible. So I highly recommend doing that, and you should be able to do it relatively easy. I don't have a good example here of my marches, but for, if we were to look at me using some tier 1 carriers, I could use, for example, here I only have, say, I don't know, we'll just use 50,000 ants as an example, and I can already carry 2.7 million. The largest gathering nodes are only 1.6 million for a level 8, which I will not gather at, simply because the level 8 nodes are all very close to the tree, so they're very easy to be spotted by the enemy. But I will gather at level 7, which is only 1.2 million for meat and plant. So then I can really use something like, what is it here, 20,000 ants, and I can gather the maximum capacity of that gathering node. And then if they were to attack me, they're only defeating 20,000 tier 1 carriers, and they're going to get very little points, and they're still going to use a bunch of their stamina to kick me out, and that's stamina that they will not be able to use to attack a squirter or to attack one of our players directly. So for them, yes, they will keep me from generating points, but they're also not going to get many points themselves. So that's a very effective strategy, is to have a lineup like this where you're using low level and a low amount of ants. Those are really the main ways to get points in this event, and you will see the scores will get quite high. It will not be surprising to see people scoring over 1 or 2 or 3 billion points in this event for the main attacking players. but you'll only need, say, 200 to 300 million to get the 9 shell rewards anyway, so you don't need to score that high. That's why I mentioned gathering is a very, very effective strategy because you get a lot of points for gathering on the enemy server. The final way to get points is just like Groundhog Day, you can upgrade your insects, and if you star them up, you will get points that will also count towards server versus server. Maybe the last comment here is the king of the server has the ability to kick out players that are in the squirter, so it's very important for the king to be active, because if you see players putting a lot of tier 6 or tier 7 ants into a squirter, simply kick them out from the squirter to avoid them giving away a lot of points to a very high leveled, high power player on the enemy server. You really only want to have players in there that are either extremely strong, one of the top 4 or 5 on your server, or players that are using tier 1 or tier 2 ants to minimize the points they would give to an enemy if they were to attack. So that will work for the server that the king is on. So for example, if the king is on server 1018, they can only kick out players from the squirters on 1018. Likewise, if they teleport to server 1021, they can only kick out players that are in the 1021 squirters, for their own server members anyway. So those are the important tips for the kill event. If there's any questions, just let me know and I'll try to answer you. Hopefully this will help to have a very successful first Warzone expedition if it's your first event, or to help you improve your scores and improve your servers winning chances by using some of these strategies.